cyber and threats, how do you see the moral implications playing out when we're attacking systems or hardware and technology as opposed to people directly? Do you think that we view the morality of that, or the decision-making process about whether something is right or wrong in a different way now that we're not attacking people directly?
This question has actually come up before, in a slightly different way, which is sort of long-range bombing. You know, if you're going to kill somebody, shouldn't you be up close and personal? You know, I don't know. I mean, really? So the question with respect is, should we put the ability to disable an adversary's cyber systems in play in the military arsenal as part of that arsenal, as a means of prevailing when we come to the point at which the dispute between parties, in this case states, is so substantial? In my view, of course we should. Of course we should. Are there moral hazards inherent in that? Yes. In part because it is very difficult to target effects in a cyber environment, but as we've seen, it's difficult to target effects in the military environment as well. And one of the really interesting things that I think has developed over the past 100 years, not just recent past, but 100 years, is sort of this humanity's sort of moral march toward the conclusion that wars are wrong, and it should be hard to go to war, and we should limit our ability to go to war where killing people is the resolution of our issues. So I fundamentally believe, war is not the weather. We shouldn't act like it is. We shouldn't act like, oh, it's going to rain. Oh, there's a war. I mean, these are complex combinations of things. I mean, I have my own theories about why countries go to war, but I think there is pretty unanimous view among policymakers in Washington that putting the ability to disable adversary capabilities via cyber is a perfectly legitimate tool of warfare. Yeah.
What would you evaluate as the biggest threat to U.S. cybersecurity? So is it state actors or non-state actors?
Unpatched vulnerabilities. I know you're not going to like my answer. That's the biggest threat. The biggest threat is existing unpatched vulnerabilities. And that's what's causing the problem we have right now. Do we have state actors who are targeting and exploiting U.S. targets, including in the defense industrial base and other? Yes, we do. Do we have criminals, out there, bringing American companies to their knees in some cases, stealing intellectual property, profiting from computer fraud? We absolutely do. So to me, and I always answer the question the same way, unpatch existing vulnerabilities, especially when we know what to do to prevent 80% of all known attacks. We're not doing it.
How do you see the Snowden disclosures affecting the government's ability to recruit the best and the brightest students and individuals to defend this country?
I don't think it has had that effect. I think one of the things you have seen in the Snowden debate, my observation, is that you've seen a generational difference in assessing what this means and what happened and what it means. People of my generation, you take an oath. You sign an oath. And there are processes for when you have a problem with what's going on, there are processes to kind of follow. And a lot of younger people are sort of past that and into the consequences of the revelations. I'm not in a good position to answer, is recruitment down? We're also downsizing. So, in the military, as Secretary Hagel's been announcing over the past several days. But I got to tell you, anecdotally, there's people, this generation in their 20s and 30s, you guys, I tell everybody, I think you're the greatest generation. I mean, I'm not saying that to suck up to you, I don't have to, right? And my parents were the greatest generation, which everybody says. But you guys are enormously talented, capable, you question everything, and you're extremely other-regarding. And you're going to succeed from a posture of success. I don't know too many societies in world history which have succeeded. Most times when societies are positions of success, and at the high point, they start to decline. And you guys are going to be the reason we don't. Yeah.
What do you think about online groups that increase transparency and anonymous? Do they affect security?
So, I'm kind of the, what's the Churchill quote? The only thing, God, somebody here should remember it, about a free press. Yeah, okay, so there's a great Churchill quote, I'm embarrassed to say I don't recall it. The only thing worse than a free press is the absence of one. I think that's what it is. I come down on that. Look, are we placing the bar higher on our public sector institutions? Yes. Is the bar impossibly high? I don't know. But it feels pretty intense. When you're in government, everybody second guesses what you do. Everybody second guesses. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody can do it better. And then you bring them in, and they see how it's really hard. But it's not a question of people not wanting to do the right thing. People are trying to get it right. But there's also that old saying about the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I believe in transparency. We value transparency, yeah? People say, it's our highest value. In fact, I had a colleague the other day say, look, the debate is not between privacy and security. The debate is between secrecy and transparency. And so, is that true? Is transparency the highest thing we value? What's the most successful company right now? What's the highest rated company right now in the United States? Apple Computer. Known for its transparency? No. No. Known for the fact that it can reliably deliver a value proposition that really feels a need for a lot of us. They do it very well, in a replicated way. And they generate systems actually that have a reasonably high degree of transparency. Your machine will ask you, are you sure you want to get rid of this? So it's, I'm born and bred here. I like transparency. I like visibility. What's very interesting about transparency is that it, along with several other norms in my judgment, are very powerfully sweeping the world. There are very powerful norms today, publicly, norms of inclusivity, norms of transparency, norms of reciprocity, and norms of accountability. Inclusivity, think about it. Nothing about me without me. Very powerful. And in that respect, transparency kind of falls into that category as well. Yeah?
You mentioned that the government doesn't have a monopoly on security. Do we need a monopoly on security? And I guess, so instead of downloading Norton antivirus, should we be downloading Department of Homeland Security antivirus software on our computers? Is that how that would work?
Yeah, so there are some people who say that because governments, the monopolists, we're using that word small m, right? That has been the competency of governments, the legitimate consolidated control over lethality, over the ability to protect. And should the government protect us in cyberspace? There's a big debate going on both within your government and sort of globally around the world. No two countries are answering this question in precisely the same way. What I can tell you is, in my view, I don't think so. I don't think governments ought to be the ones who are providing all of our cybersecurity. First of all, we can't. When people, there are a few mythologies out there, well, gee, if only I had the secrets that the government has, we could protect our enterprise. Well, that's ridiculous. Government has some specialized information about malware that's out there, stuff that presents to us, about how bad actors are behaving. By the way, it's important to know, for those of you who are technologists and those of you who are not, we do not use the word threat in the same way. Okay, technologists use threat as sort of an exploit, and a vulnerability and something that's moving its way through the system, so they talk about threats that way. Political scientists and policymakers talk about threats as bad guys. They're two different things. When I had a conversation with a bunch of CEOs and they said, well, if the government, who has the threat information if not the government? I said, look to your right and look to your left. Everybody's got threat information. Every enterprise of almost any size is undergoing, subject to attacks every single day. And we need a way to share that information more broadly. But we also very fundamentally ought to be executing basic cyber hygiene, to prevent against threats. So when people say, well, what do you mean by hygiene? I said, if you look at the top 20 of the critical security controls, the top 4 or 5 will prevent 80% of all attacks, all known attacks. It's very similar to brushing your teeth, flossing, and visiting the dentist twice a year, right? The American Dental Association tells you that using Crest or Colgate or whatever you use will prevent 80 to 90% of the things that cause cavities. Very similar analogy. If you know what's connected to your system, if you know what's running on your system or trying to run on your system, if you limit and manage the people who have administrative permissions to override, bypass, or change your security settings, and if you have real-time visibility into your system, running constant automated diagnostics and monitoring and patching in real time, you will eliminate more than 80% of all known attacks. And what's the number? Peter Singer says it's 93%. I don't know what the number is. It's pretty high. Why aren't we doing it? And do I need the government to brush my teeth? No. Do I need the government to execute basic cyber hygiene? No. You know, is there 15, 20%? Yes. You know, do I need the government there? Maybe, but maybe not. So I think we need a distributed system of responsibility for cybersecurity. Yeah.
So up till now we've been talking about states have been debating about doing on cybersecurity, but internationally, do you see the international community, either through the UN or some other organization, executing policy based on cyber security?
Again, the international community is a little bit all over the map on this. Every government, most every government is doing something. Pretty much now every government has, demonstrates that it's heard about the concept. That was not always true. I mean, even in the past 4 or 5 years, this was not a particularly salient topic to a number of governments around the world. That has changed. In part because the permeation of the internet and the social effects of that permeation have changed things. And so governments are now, everybody's dealing with this issue, right? And governments, again, are used to being the ones responsible for security. So when you say cybersecurity, governments are sort of looking around for something to do. I mean, I don't say that cynically. I mean, that's what they do. They provide security. So that's what the jump ball is. What will the role of governments be in this question? And that, are they looking to do it through the UN? Yes, in some cases. That's what the WICIT conference, it was either last year, I think it's actually the year before, now in 2012, was all about. Huge controversy among member states. Again, there are those countries who believe that this ought to be brought under the governance of the internet needs to be brought under UN, international law and UN structures. And there are those who say, among them the United States, that we need a multi-stakeholder model. By the way, we don't have anything like it on the planet, where governments sit side by side with private sector institutions to address a global problem. Gavi might be close. Gavi might be close. But certainly in the security space, there's nothing like it. Yeah.
Given your understanding of systems, how do you see the creation of the Justice Department personnel? Do you think that was the right choice? And then what are the primary challenges to sharing information between government institutions, particularly really large ones like the DHS, not just between government institutions and the private sector?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So when I went into the department and the Obama administration came in 2009, one of the first things we had to do was write the Quadrennial Homeland Security Review, the QHSR. The Department of Defense had been writing a QDR, the Quadrennial Defense Review, for, 12 or 15 years prior to that, and they modeled this requirement on the department after the QDR. And so what we did instead is we said, look, we have enormous brand name recognition. Everybody's heard of DHS. Everybody's heard of Homeland Security. And this was, in 2009, the department was 4 becoming 5 years old. 5 becoming 6 years old. Still a relatively new department. And tremendous, worldwide, I can tell you firsthand, worldwide name recognition. Something less than tremendous brand name understanding. Okay, people say, what does this department do? So what we said is, look, the purpose of this department is to help create a safe, secure, resilient place where the American way of life can thrive. All right, look, it's nobody's idea of poetry, but the point is it was a sentence that sort of said, what do you guys do? Well, our job, on behalf of the federal government, is to help create a safe, secure, resilient place where the American way of life can thrive. And then say, how are you going to do that? And we said, what we decided is we needed to do 5 things well. We need to prevent another 9/11, prevent terrorism. We needed to secure our borders and administer them. We needed to administer and enforce our immigration laws. We needed to build national resilience in the face of disasters. And we needed to ensure the cybersecurity of the nation's critical infrastructure. You can trace, to a large extent, the exploding conversation on cybersecurity to that articulation by the Department of Homeland Security saying this is one of our 5 most important missions as a federal agency, and on behalf of the federal government, we are going to take this on. And so now, there was still time at that day, people talking about are we going to keep the department or not. There's no question that we will keep the department, in my view, because of the internal coherence of those 5 missions. Yeah.
How do you think
cyber warfare will change, like the destructiveness of war going forward, and also if you we'll start to see terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda utilize that for that.
Right. You know, you don't want to tempt the evil eye, but you know, will we see you know, virulent groups who have determinedly antagonistic agendas reach out for these tools? Yeah, we will see that. You know, some people say we're seeing it already. You know, so that will evolve. Some people say that the introduction of cybersecurity, cyber warfare and the ability to destroy things from a cyber perspective, essentially gives a sort of whole new meaning to effects-based conflict. And you can disable adversaries in pretty significant ways without firing a shot. But as I said earlier, I think it is and will be one of the tools in the toolbox. Yeah.
Is there a parallel you draw between the situation of U.S. counterinsurgency in Afghanistan and Pakistan and the trend of the lack of trust in government institutions or institutions worldwide? Because it seems like
Just for the record, it's not a U.S. insurgency in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
right, the counterinsurgency efforts. And do you think that counterinsurgency strategy of winning the hearts and minds could be applicable to the cyberspace?
Usually when I get questions about Afghanistan and Pakistan, I tell people, you've got the wrong loot. That's the other loot. Full disclosure, my husband, Doug Lute, former general in the Army, was the person on the president's staff under President Bush and President Obama who dealt with Afghanistan and Pakistan. He's now ambassador to NATO, so just full disclosure. Do I think, you know, in particular, is it you know, the way the U.S. has prosecuted the war in Afghanistan that has bless you, generated, no, I don't think it's generated that. I think we are broadly in an environment where societies have become more educated, more mobile, more sophisticated, more integrated, more active, more empowered because of the internet, and they're questioning everything. You know, what they're looking at is, you know, the world is a very difficult and complicated place where very bad things happen. Very good things happen as well. Very bad things happen, and can we do better? And how well do we think our governments are doing at discharging the responsibilities that they've been given? I mean, that's a perennial question that societies have been asking. I think the introduction of the internet is dramatically changing that game and really putting governments on notice here that social expectations are powerfully mobilizing in important ways that condition what they do.